We didn't have to be the ones to tell you this, but this football season has not panned out the way that anyone has expected. What are the ramifications?
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Wolfpack Nation? It's time to get locked in with Locked On. Thanks for making Locked On Wolfpack your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Our Tuesday sponsor is FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place just $5 and get started with $150 back in bonus bets if that first $5 bet hits. When your first $5 bet, you get $150 back in bonus bets only on FanDuel. Happy Tuesday to all. As always, I'm Grayson Boone, joined by former Wolfpack defensive tackle Kenton Gibbs. Kenton, unfortunately, we are in a little bit of the end game now. You lose this game to Duke in embarrassing fashion. You only have 2 games in the regular season left on the schedule. The absolute best you can do is 7-5. The worst you can do is 5-7 and miss a bowl entirely. Ultimately, I believe the loss to Wake Forest had officially put that stamp on it. The season was a failure. We wanted to have 10-plus wins or even just 10 wins, potentially get to an ACC championship appearance. All that dissipated, and then it suddenly got even worse than that. So this is officially a down year. It's a failure of a season, and that comes with consequences. It comes with ramifications. We're going to get into that here. What are some of the first couple things that kind of worry you as we creep closer to the offseason?
Well, the biggest thing that worries me is not just the ability to retain the guys that we do have or the guys that have committed. It's the guys that were big fish that were still in play that we know there's no chance of landing now. You and I have talked about this off air and on it in terms of certain big name guys who were like, hey, it was coming out of their camps that if NC State could prove that they could be a winner, if this was truly a banner year, as many people suspected it to be, all of a sudden we're in contention for 5-star, high 4-star guys that were just massive names, number 1 in their position in the nation type deal, or number 2, 3, that type of deal. And we see what we saw, or we see what we're seeing. We see it, and those recruits are seeing it. So where do you really get the idea of, I'm going to be okay, we're going to be good at it? Where do you get it from? Like, where do you get the idea from, hey, if winning a championship is something that's important to me, I'm going to get it here? How? Because this was supposed to be the banner year. And yet, due to some injuries and things, we see where we're at.
And that leads me directly into a comment that I want to put up on. This is in the comments of our Monday show, and I thought this was a perfect segue into this exact conversation here on Tuesday. So this comes from @NC State alum on YouTube. They say, what kind of impact do y'all think this performance will have on 25 commits and the current stars leaving? Well, I believe we've already had 2 decommitments, although those have come in the last couple weeks. The first one was a defensive lineman by the name of Mekhi Williams-Lee. If I'm not mistaken, I believe he actually chose Clemson very shortly after we lost to Clemson. More recently, we've lost wide receiver Jamar Browder, decommits from NC State and chooses Michigan. Good luck catching passes up there, buddy. But so you've lost 2 significant names in your 2025 recruiting class. Would we be surprised to see more add to that list? These are the types of things that do come with having such a down year and the expectations that you had on top of that. You're going to have to deal with the consequences of some of your bigger fish, so to speak, in recruiting, wanting to reopen their recruitment and look elsewhere. That's the type of thing that happens here. But not just in high school, also in the portal. The portal, although it's not open yet, across the country, there are already players that probably have in their mind that they're thinking about getting in the portal. And once you get that far, you also start to think about where I could potentially play next. If they had NC State in mind, perhaps not anymore. And again, I don't want to make this a doomsday episode, but this is where NC State football is now. We're going to enter a very critical part of the end of this season, which rolls very, very quickly into the offseason because this season has been so disappointing. When you don't reach your expectations, in fact, when you don't come anywhere close, how do you rally the troops, so to speak, and keep momentum on the table? It just gets harder and harder and harder. Not to mention the NIL portion of this, which we've mentioned several times already. I've seen several people across social media say, I'd be less inclined to give now to NIL because this seems like the product that we're going to get every single year. These are the ramifications in this new world of college football. It's a whole lot to handle.
Grayson, you just said a wide receiver is going up to Michigan, and good luck, buddy. Quick question, right? When's the last time Michigan appeared in a conference or a national championship?
Last year, they won the whole damn thing.
Okay, you said defensive lineman decommitted and committed to Clemson. Quick question. When's the last time they were in a conference championship or a national championship playoff type situation?
What, 2 years ago, maybe?
2 years ago. We're in year 12. Quick question, Grayson. When's the last time we were in any of those things?
Goose egg. Nothing to show for it.
That's the point here. And you know, you talk about kind of how the year being a disappointment, the year being a letdown affects that. I mean, there's not a world in which that doesn't matter. There's not a world in which the results of this season do not weigh heavily on these recruits' minds because, again, this wasn't just another year. This wasn't a year that we came into where we're like, hey, we just lost the best quarterback in program history. You know, we lost the best linebacker in program history in Peyton Wilson. We lost a lot of good pieces up front. This is going to be a building back type of year. No, this was supposed to be the apex year. So like you said, there's a lot of dejection coming from the expectation at the start of the season to now. We just kind of got to live with it.
I've also seen a lot of people get fearful of who may or may not look to leave NC State. And of course, that is much further down the road. But again, when everything is off the table, that's where your mind starts to go. And everyone gets really worried about CJ Bailey and his previous connections to Miami. I'll say this about CJ Bailey. Without any inside information, just my gut feeling, I would believe that CJ's here to stay. When you look into next year, this is more or less his team. I don't see the staff going into the portal and bringing in another starter to compete with CJ. Maybe they go get a guy that can be a suitable backup, but I would anticipate, based on how you've encountered the last couple of years, bringing in a one-year rental and how that has not quite worked out for the Pack, I would put all of my eggs into the CJ Bailey basket. And what I've also seen out of CJ, he seems to be a very loyal kid. Again, this is all surface level. This is just surface level inferences, but he seems to be the kid that would understand that this is his team. These are his guys, his wide receivers to build with. And that is what he will want to take into next year. So I'm not exactly so concerned with CJ Bailey. I'm much more concerned with A, linebackers, B, linemen, and then probably C, maybe a guy like Casey Concepcion. But I'll say this about KC. If he wants to walk and his price tag is so high, it was lovely having you here in Raleigh. I don't think KC is the guy that you hold the rest of the roster hostage over. There's some very difficult conversations that are going to come out of this. And it won't just be KC. It might be other skill position guys, or guys in the secondary, guys on the line, offense or defense. This is where we currently are. So I would say brace yourself for that part of the season and the off season. But this is what happens when you miss the mark so badly on a season where it was supposed to be different. You were supposed to win 10 games. This was supposed to be the best roster you've ever assembled with the best coaching staff that you thought that you'd ever assembled. This is the fallout of when it all goes south.
Yeah, I remember you and I were having conversation about, is this the best offensive and defensive coordinator tandem that we've ever had? Looks like that'll be a no, Scotty. Again, I look at this situation and I say to myself, keep all the stars as you can, but at this point in time, I think you try your best to keep your stars. I don't think there's anybody that's worth holding the roster hostage for.
Exactly. I think you pay for great, but you let good walk. And that's a very fine line of how you delineate that. But I agree with you, Kenton. I don't think there's anyone here, maybe outside of CJ Bailey, that you completely tie up the majority of NIL money and put the rest of your roster in jeopardy for. I just don't see it. So I think for NC State, you got to be okay if one of your guys that you perceive to be a star wants to look elsewhere. Unfortunately, that's the nature of the beast. But I think there are several guys that have been high-producing guys this year that I think are very likely to stay. This is all just gut feeling. Like a guy like Hollywood Smothers, for example. I wouldn't see why he would leave. He seems to be happy here. You'd hope that he'd get a lot more touches. I'm going to touch on that, pun intended, in just a second. But guys that have contributed at a high level this year and still have eligibility, I can see plenty of reason why they'd want to return despite how the season has gone.
At the end of the day, there's reason for these guys to return. And, you look at what basketball did and the feeling around Raleigh about those guys. I mean, let's just be honest about this. DJ Horn's never going to have to buy a drink again in Raleigh. Same with DJ Burns. Same with Casey Morcell, right? Anytime you or I see them in the bar, the tabs on that. Now, hey, don't get crazy, right? Don't go in there ordering 8 triples of Hennessy back. Never mind, we're not going to go there. But in all seriousness, this is a moment where it means something to do it here in Raleigh in a way that may not elsewhere. Because again, if you win that basketball team, I hope to become the Black Hats. That is my hope. It is my genuine hope that we become a team that's at a level where it's like Final Four appearances are the expectation. Like, hey, you need to be there every few years. I would hope so. But the reality is, if we look at the history of this thing, if we wait another, 30, 40 years before we go to another Final Four, that team will be celebrated, bought back every 5 years so we can celebrate and tell them how much we love them. The exact same thing applies to football, but even more so, even moreover, in terms of if you do it here, if you do it in Raleigh, it's going to be extremely special because it just hasn't happened.
And there's certainly going to be a lot more conversations along the lines of this one, but this is just kind of the tip of the iceberg for you on Tuesday. Coming up next, we're going to get into a whole lot of nothing or a whole lot of something. This comes after a quick word from our sponsors. Locked On Wolfpack listeners, it's time to listen up. You need to download the Roy app, and you've heard us talk about it several times this season. Roy is revolutionizing how the NIL industry works. Roy allows you, the fan, to have a say in who gets the NIL money. And here's what I absolutely love about Roy. You get your money back if that player is to transfer. Roy is helping us keep our teams intact, and it's actually good for the game in the long term. Kamal Bonner is our Roy Player of the Week for this week. Young linebacker that's really starting to come onto the scene and make a name for himself. You too can show your support for Kamal Bonner by contributing to his account. And to do that, you too should download the Roy app and show a little appreciation. Download the Roy app or join Roy.com today using promo code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON. Every athlete from every team is on there. No purchase necessary, void where prohibited, and go to joinroy.com for full terms. Roy, support the players and change the game. Middle portion of our Tuesday show. Now time for a whole lot of nothing, whole lot of something. 3 topics. We'll tell you exactly where we stand on them. First one here. In fact, this is ridiculous. I wanted to talk about it more here on Tuesday. Hollywood Smothers against Duke only had 6 total touches with all the production we've seen out of him the last couple weeks. Whole lot of nothing, whole lot of something.
Whole lot of something. Whole lot of coaching malpractice is what it is. Whole lot of fireable offenses is what it is. Whole lot of, I don't really feel like it is what it is. Because I mean this from a very genuine standpoint. In what world is he not one of your best weapons? In what world does feeding him not make sense? In what world do you look at Hollywood Smothers and say, he just doesn't have it today? I don't give a damn. Force feed him. Force feed him. Make it happen. He has the type of electricity to where even if he's not having a great game, one play can be the difference.
We've seen it.
We have seen it in real time. And yet, all that work, and what did it get me? Nothing. Nothing. That's what it got us.
A whole lot of something. Whole lot of super something. Maybe the most something I've ever had to talk about on here. Said it yesterday. I'll say it again today. How under God's green earth does he only get 5 carries in 1 reception in this football game? Duke's run defense was one of the bottom teams in the conference entering Saturday, and yet our best running back that has shown his ability all season long carries the ball 5 times for 13 total yards. The crazy part about this, too, is CJ Bailey had 10 carries, whether by design or by scramble. Jordan Waters had 11 carries for just 25 yards. Kendrick Raphael was back in the fray. He had just 2 carries for 6. Casey had 1 carry for 4. Of all of these people that carried the football, I'll give you one guess who had the longest rush of the day. It was Hollywood
Smothers.
Who could believe something so egregious? Like, am I speaking a different language here? I don't understand this.
We're
When you
clearly
just
speaking
saw it.
Japanese, Grayson. We're clearly speaking Japanese,
Yeah.
and it just ain't hit.
You just saw him annihilate Stanford on the ground. He had over 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. He won you the game out at Cal late in that one. Although it was not a run, it was a reception out of the backfield, turned it upfield. He was gone. How many more examples do I have to give you? That is one of your most dynamic playmakers. It just doesn't get clearer than that. So I'll leave that there for now. It's a whole lot of something. Second one here, and this is some nasty work. Coach Dave Dorn against Duke is now 1-3 in his career. Against Wake Forest, 6-6. Whole lot of nothing, whole lot of something. Whole lot of PU.
I'm sorry. 7-9 overall in 16 games against these two.
I have another one that's even worse than maybe both of these. He's 4-5 against Boston College. Sorry, I had to say that on here. I thought you were going to turn off your camera.
I want to turn off something, but it's not my camera. I'll tell you that much. And this is why. This is, again, when people are very anti-Dave, there's a reason why I am not like, you're stupid, you're dumb, you're wrong. Because, again, the top 25 record is not really, like, to me, it's kind of, if you look at most coaches' records against the top 25, except for about a handful, they're going to be terrible. They're the top 25 for a reason. Right. I get that. This man just said Duke, Wake Forest, and Boston College.
Yeah.
A whole lot of something, man. A whole lot of something. This is as disappointing of a stat as I've heard in quite some time. And for those of you who don't know, Grayson surprises me with these. We do not go over these in pre-production. And
that was about as raw as a reaction as you're going to get.
I cannot believe that Winston-Salem, Wallace Wade Stadium, and Chestnut Hill are the places that are giving us the blues. Whole lot of something.
I don't know if I can really add to that any more than you just did. That's really all that needs to be said. It's a whole lot of something. It's a whole lot of embarrassing is what it is. And again, I don't want to jump on here and just scream anti-Dave nonsense because I don't think that's what this show should be. However, there is extremely damning evidence that shows you the job is just not getting done. It hasn't been getting done for 12 years here. And I understand the buyout is large and this, that, and the other, but man, like there's just so many things that have happened in 12 years that you sit here and you're like, how does NC State end up in that position? And I'm not saying that from a position of we should be world beaters and we should be Alabama, but when you look at the fan support, when you look at the amount of people that truly buy into this program and the way that we prop up this culture, which I do think is a strong culture. I truly do. I think in that locker room, they do play for each other week in and week out. But then you go on the field and you produce results like these, and that's why we're talking about them, because it's a whole lot of something. Tough pill to swallow. Last one here, women's basketball, quick change of pace for you. On Sunday, they played the number 1 team in the country, South Carolina. It was a Final Four rematch. Only lost by 14. Keep in mind that we are still missing Caitlin Weimar, out with an injury for quite some time. Caveat, South Carolina also did not have their primary front court player, but only lost by 14. Whole lot of nothing, whole lot of something.
I say a whole lot of nothing. I don't like only lost by 14. I mean, this team is good enough to where, like, we should never use that type of verbiage for them. Yeah. With that in mind, I do say a whole lot of nothing because it's very early in the season. Remember last year, there were times where if you looked at them early in the season, if you looked at them, I believe did we lose to South Carolina during the regular season last season, or was it Connecticut? It was. I want to say
we beat UConn.
Okay, okay, we beat UConn last year, but there were times last year where you felt like, oh man, like this team they're not going to go where those Alyssa Cunane-led teams and Kai Crutchfield teams were going. They stayed the course. They stayed the course and they figured it out because Coaches who win go out and win. They do the thing. They do the thing. And Westmore has proven he can do the thing. So, I mean, I'm not really too worried about an early game bout against one of the best teams in the nation. I believe the team that won the last 2 national championships. Like, I'm not really too concerned about that.
Yeah, for me, it's also a whole lot of nothing. I thought, despite being overpowered by South Carolina, which you basically come to expect because of how good they are, I thought it was a good showing. And NC State's down a very important player in Weimar. Isaiah James, I don't quite know if she's at 100% because she had injury coming into the season, but I thought she looked pretty good overall. Sanaya Rivers didn't play a spectacular game, but I'll tell you who did play a really good game. Zam Jones, the freshman. Zoe Brooks, who's now a sophomore. She's excellent. I was very impressed with the Swedish transfer, Tilda Trieger. I think she's going to be an incredible asset to this team. Overall, I think you saw a lot to be positive about. So this loss, it's not concerning for me. I think they are going to be more than fine as the season goes on. So for me, it's a whole lot of nothing. Coming up next, we're going to get into the Locked On Look of the Week, looking at what we believe to be the moment where the tide shifted in Duke's favor on Saturday. This comes after a quick word from our sponsors. Our second Tuesday sponsor is FanDuel. Tackle the NFL action this season on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 back in bonus bets if that first $5 bet hits. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, all in just one singular place. When you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the very same page that you're placing all of your bets. Head on over to FanDuel.com in order to join today. Again, you'll get started with that $150 in bonus bets if that first pesky $5 bet wins. That's FanDuel.com to get started. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Last couple minutes of our Tuesday show. Now time for the Locked On Look of the Week, looking at the moment where everything went south on Saturday against Duke. Kenton, what do we got?
Well, let's look at the safety, ladies and gentlemen. What this play is, it's an RPO. What that means is a run pass option. Some people like to call it an extended triple option here. And the premise of it is to put the defense in conflict. Here's the only problem with that. Every now and then, the defense does these funny, wonky little things that confuse the offense or kind of break the keys a little bit. So on this play, we are seeing, I believe that's Hollywood in the backfield next to CJ Bailey, reading the defensive end and the weak side linebacker / safety to the boundary here, number 12. KC is lined up on the boundary with Noah Rogers. KC is running a bubble. Noah Rogers is blocking. And so every single offensive lineman is blocking to their left, inside zone type of scheme, because this is supposed to say if number 7 sits, you hand the ball off to Hollywood. If number 7 is crashing in, you pull the ball. If number 12, who is directly behind number 7, about 3-4 yards behind number 7, if number 12 addresses the bubble, then basically you're in this type of situation. If 12 addresses the bubble and 7 sits, then you have 2 guys sitting, and basically you have 5 guys to block 4 in the box here. If 12 attacks the bubble while 7 is crashing in, the quarterback pulls it and goes and takes off himself. Because again, this is why people call it an extended triple option. Because if you see those 2 things, 12 is gone, 7 goes for the running back, and now you've got 4 on 5 again. And if 7 sits, but 12, if 7 sits, but 12 also sits in here and does not pay attention to the bubble, you shoot it out to the bubble, because again, you've got 1 blocker to 1 corner and all that good stuff. But I want everybody to recognize how wordy I was there. That was intentional. You know why? Because the quarterback has to make all of these decisions and determinations. In real life, that's how quick you've got to make it. That's how quick you've got to make it. Just like that. You've got to make that decision. Now, Grayson, let's just say, hypothetically, you had a guy who hadn't practiced as a starter all throughout camp. You had a guy that was thrust in that position because of injury, and that guy is backed up to the 2-yard line. Do you take that deal?
Absolutely not.
You sure you don't want to make that many decisions? Are you sure?
I would not. And that's not even a dig on CJ Bailey. I wouldn't want anybody.
Anybody. I don't care if it's Lagway. I don't care if it's who else is supposed to be a good freshman quarterback here this year? Eli Holstein up at Pitt. I don't give a damn who it is. I don't want my freshman having to process and think through things while he is 3 yards deep in his own end zone at any point in time. But now, let's go forward from here and let's talk about the next step in this play, shall we? The next thing that we see in this play is the 3 inside and the 3 interior offensive linemen, the combination of center, guard. Now, these 3 are going to be important for a reason. They're a special Mauska tool that's going to come up later. The reality is simple. In a zone scheme, in any zone scheme, you are not responsible for a man. You are responsible for a gap. Let me say that again. You are not responsible for a man. You are responsible for a gap, meaning whoever comes into your gap, it is your job to move them, to get them out the way, to do something with them. So these 3 have the front side B gap, front side A gap, back side A gap. Keep that in mind. Uh-oh, what's this, Grayson? Because it looks like Duke is lined up in a standard little cover 3 situation here. You've got 6 in the box, and, you've got 5 guys outside the box. You've got technically 12 is, well, I guess 12 is outside the box, but he's very close. He's on the edge of the box here. But you've got, these bodies in the box and what looks like a standard little cover 3 situation here. But what's this? Oh, no. The nickel to the front side of the field, he comes on a blitz, which means the edge to the front side of the field gets in the B gap, which means the nose tackle to the front side of the field goes to the backside A, which means the defensive tackle to the weak side loops around for contain, and the defensive end number 7 is dropping out to anything in the flat, which negates the bubble screen. But this is why I say I don't want my freshmen making that many decisions, because the correct decision on this play, the correct decision is to hand the ball off. Yep. Because when the looper comes around, the number 7 is taking away the bubble. So that option's out. When the looper comes around, yes, he initially addresses the running back. But here's why I say you needed to give it to the running back instead of pull this one. Because 12 is sitting there and coming into the box, creeping into the box a little bit. 7 is dropping out, and the defensive tackle is looping around. If you hand this ball, you give yourself a shot to get out of the end zone. You give yourself at least a chance to get out of the end zone as opposed to pulling it. Now, here's another thing that I need y'all to pay attention to. By this point, the play is going and the stunt has occurred. Now, this red line that's going across the screen from top to bottom, that's the line of scrimmage. Grayson, quick question. Are there Duke defenders that reestablished the line of scrimmage in the backfield, or did NC State's offensive line reestablish the line of scrimmage upfield?
Duke got in the backfield more than we had push on them.
Duke got in the backfield more. And Big 75 over here is in what I like to call the prayer stance. You know what that means, Grayson?
On your knees.
When an offensive lineman is on his knees, you're thinking of one of 2 things, okay? You're saying, Lord, please let my back make a play. Let my quarterback make a play because I'm losing this block. And number 2, some religions do get on their knees to pray. That's just how it goes. But the looper comes around. He runs a tight loop. And this is why I say you have got to hand this thing off. Because, again, 12 and 7, both on the outside, taking away KC. So the conventional wisdom would be pull this. The conventional wisdom would be if the looper's coming tight, and 12 and 7 are staying outside, then you pull it and make it happen. But the only problem is where you are on the field, it's a bigger risk than there is potential reward for you pulling it, as well as the fact that Duke is reestablishing the line of scrimmage. And let's just be real. Grayson, I'm a lot bigger and stronger than you, right? You and me
Correct.
can both agree that. You think I could block you on my knees when you're standing straight up and leaning forward?
No.
Absolutely not. And Grayson ain't played football since Pee Wee. You understand? It was Pop Warner back then. And that's what it was. So now we go further. CJ Bailey pulls the ball. Now here's why I said he should have handed it. Because if he hands it, at least Hollywood has a chance that, he's not a big guy. But I would hope he has the common sense to say, you know what, the posse's getting close. Let me just get this out the end zone. As opposed to when he pulls it, you're 3 yards deep in the end zone. Nobody's running a real meaningful route. Everything is cooked. Because even if you run a bubble with a glance on the top, which I don't think it was, I believe Noah Rogers just blocked on this play. But even if you run that glance, Grayson, where is 12 sitting?
Right on KC.
He's sitting right inside and about, I want to say, 7 yards or so from the line of scrimmage, or 6 yards or so from the line of scrimmage. That means he's right in the window to take away the glance. So CJ Bailey at this point in time has pulled it, and because Carter could not block 97, he's coming free basically. 99's coming free basically, and this is what we get. CJ Bailey under 2 Blue Devils. And, this may be a callback to some of the listeners of this show get, because Duke is in the end zone saying, we can dance if we want to. We can leave this world behind. If a man don't dance, and if he don't dance, then he ain't no friend of mine, because they're doing the what, Grayson?
Safety dance.
The safety dance in the damn end zone, because we thought it was a great idea to put stress and thought on an 18-year-old standing 3 yards deep in his own end zone. It's foolishness. This is a moment where you take away all decision-making. You take away all extras. You take away everything and say, hey, listen, we are resigned and okay with getting 3-4 yards and punting this thing out. We're okay with that. But instead, we got what we got with the safety.
And this is the type of play we talk about where with a freshman quarterback, everyone's got to step up and help him out. That includes offensive linemen. That includes skill players. That includes the coaching staff, the people that are calling these plays. You got to give CJ a shot to make a positive play on this drive. This play never had a chance. Like literally never had a chance.
You want to know the funniest part about it? If 97 is blocked, CJ made 99 miss. He made 99 miss. He just didn't have anywhere to go. Once 99 came around on that tight loop, he climbed from the running back immediately to the quarterback. CJ made a miss, but he made a miss right into the hands of his good friend 97, and now we got folks dancing in the end zone. Well, proceed. I'm sorry to cut you off.
I was going to say worst case scenario, but this, in fact, was the worst case scenario. It seemed like on this play, best case scenario, it would have been handing it to Hollywood that gets you maybe back to like the 1 or the line of scrimmage. That's best case. That's not giving your freshman quarterback a shot here. And you want to talk about momentum in this game. You had just forced a 3-and-out on defense. You get the ball. This drive turns into a safety. I believe we kick it to them, but I think they kick it back to us. Then after that, we fumble. So then they kick a field goal. They go up 5. From that point on, the game just always felt out of reach. Even when we were clawing back in it, you think about these early mistakes and how quickly that killed you in a game like this. This is the type of offensive malpractice that we've been harping on all season long. It's not giving your best players the best chance possible in order to make an impact down the field. It's little things like this that snowball into bigger things. This example here, I do believe that this was a massive game-changing play in this game, and it came, 2 minutes in, 3 minutes in? Yeah. You can't have stuff like this, and that is a big reason that NC State is 5-5.
I mean, hey, there's nothing else to say. It's foolishness. It's tomfoolery. It's idiocracy. You do not run an RPO on your own 2-yard line. You just don't do it. You give definitive play calls that take the thought out of it. that take you got to read this out, read that out of it from your true freshman quarterback.
Yeah. And to further my point, no, I don't want CJ with that play. I wouldn't want Grayson McCall with that play. I wouldn't want Brennan Armstrong to run that play. Don't give the defense a chance to pin you back in the end zone. That type of play call gave them exactly that. An RPO 3 yards deep in your end zone. What are we even talking about? I'm going to lose my mind if we don't end this episode here. So that'll do it for us here on Tuesday. As always, thank you all so much for joining us. Be sure to hit that like button, drop your comments in the comment box. Tell us what you think about potential ramifications here of a down year for NC State football. Tell us what you think about Hollywood Smothers and his lack of usage. Tell us what you think about this play in particular, where it results in a safety. Anything else you have on your mind, drop that in the comment box as well. Mash that subscribe button. We'll see you right back here tomorrow on Wednesday for more. And until then, go Pack.
Go Pack.